the death of the Justice League. This will start with issue 75, or end with issue 75. Is going to be the last issue. Apparently, after Justice League 75, it's going to be done. The Justice League are going to be dead. And let's see if I can find a cooler picture. Oh, they all look the same. Do I literally two opened up? Oh. Anyways, yeah, so it's going to be the end of the Justice League with number 75. And people, I remember a couple people in the comments were like talking about it. That's how you guys brought it to my attention. They do this stuff all the time. Someone's dying, dead. I mean, they killed Superman when I grew up with comics, and it was much bigger. This won't be anything close to what the death of Superman was. That was at the perfect height of the comic boom in the 90s. And I remember watching this video. It's on YouTube. This lady's like, she goes into the comic shop, and it's like, I don't know, ABC News, Fox News, who knows what it is. And they're interviewing people, and they're like, oh, so do you read Superman comics? She's like, no, this is going to be my kid's college fund. And she grabs like 5 copies of The Death of Superman. I don't know what The Death of Superman goes for now. Like $50 to $100. Oh, I remember I got like recently, like within the last year or two, I got like 50 copies of them, sold them for like $5 to $10 a piece. Yeah, they're not. That's funny. It's only valuable because supply and demand. It's got to be rare, and it's got to be in demand. When there's a lot of them, even if it's in demand, won't be valuable. So they're killing off all the main superheroes for the most part, and they're going to replace them all. So you got Superman's son is going to be Superman. You got Lucius Fox's son. I believe it's his son. He's playing Batman. Isn't that Mira? I believe. I haven't the slightest idea who this Green Lantern is. I don't know. Then you have this person who's taking over as Wonder Woman. All this kind of stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, that's what they're assuming is going to happen, is these people are going to be taking over. But then I watched a video by Ethan Van Sciver. Now, if you don't know who he is a comic book artist. Mostly, I would say, most of his work, his well-known work is probably the early 2000s. I've had I still do have a couple of his original pieces. Most of the late 90s, early 2000s is probably it's like his most prominent time in the industry. He's gone off and done his own thing, and he's not part of it anymore. He has a YouTube channel. It's pretty cool. It gives some like insight into what's it's actually like working there, and how much artists can actually make, and how you make money, and all this kind of stuff. He breaks down like the money stuff. He also gets into more like political stuff that I don't really care about. But he brought up some interesting points about this. So a lot of times people are blaming the woke mob is destroying it. Well, it might be maybe true. Some of these writers and artists are like woke SJWs, and so they're influencing these comics. A lot of times it has to do with one thing, that everything has to do with money. So he brought up a point that, so this guy here, right here, this guy, his name is Daniel Cherry II. This is Jim Lee. Daniel Cherry II is the general manager. Now, he was brought on, this article is from 2021, August. He was brought on a year before that. It says somewhere in the article. I don't know where it is. He's brought on a year before that. Almost a year ago, the publishing unit behind Superman blah, blah, blah was a hit, brutal cut, saw 1/3 of the company's ranks wiped off due to layoffs and stuff like that. All right. This guy was basically brought on to make these layoffs and all this kind of stuff, make it more seamless. He's basically come here because you know what he did before? He worked at Activision, right? Was it Activision? Yeah, former Activision esports executive. He doesn't know anything about comics. He doesn't care about it. Taking on the business aspects of the company. He was hired in September, so a year from this article, because article was in August, so a year ago, taking on the business of the publishing initiative, Black Batman, blah, 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 blah. His whole esports executive. He's not a comic person, right? It's not like Jim Lee, right? Jim Lee's worked in the industry, obviously huge into the comic stuff. So he was in here to basically make this company more appealing, right, for investors and stuff like that. Because what happened just roughly 6 months or so after this, 8 months after this, AT&T and Disney, or Discovery, announced their merger, right? Discovery is buying Warner Media. AT&T bought it from, I can't remember who. They bought it and then they sold it to, and they failed. And AT&T owns Warner Media, which owns DC Comics, owns everything, right? Anything that has to do with Warner Brothers. So DC Comics is in there, Bugs Bunny is in there, CNN is in there, all sorts of stuff, tons and tons of stuff in there for $43 billion. So what Ethan Skyver was saying is this guy, this Daniel Cherry 3, is not a comic person. He was in there to make cuts, to make that it looks like a better company money-wise. So then when it went to the parent company, right, I'm sure all the divisions did that. And so then AT&T, Warner Media, whatever it's called, could then bring it to Discovery and go, hey, look, all of these companies, all these little sub-companies we have under the main company is doing fantastic. Like, we're cutting, we're making it more enticing and all this kind of stuff. So that's why he's brought on. And what do you know? After the merger, he is leaving DC Comics for Kanye West. Oh, big surprise, right? He literally came in and did what he needed to do for a year because he's not a comic person. He's not there to like, here, let me grow this company. These are the good characters you want. Let's make this character this, make that, all this kind of stuff. So he brought in, he made all these random characters like Jonathan Kent more important and, all these other random characters. And people are like, oh, it's a woke thing. It could be. You don't want to, Ethan Van Scriver said, it's not necessarily a woke thing. It's actually a money thing because you have to pay royalties to the original creators and of the characters. So anytime you put Superman up there, you have to pay the families of Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, right? Or Bob Kane and Bill Finger for Batman, all that kind of stuff. Like if you create a villain or anything like that, you have to pay the person that created the villain, so on and so forth. But what ends up happening is you create these characters, right, which are called derivative characters. And what Ethan was saying is when you create a derivative character, like this Batman, Green Lantern, like all this, right, whoever created this Jonathan Kent character, they don't get any royalties because he's basically a copy of Superman. So you don't have to pay any royalties because it's a derivative. It doesn't count. Like, you can't just create the exact same character and claim it as your own and change a few things. He's Superman. So you don't pay royalties whoever created Jonathan Kent. But then you also don't have to pay royalties to the person that created Superman. The families of Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, because it's technically not Superman. So there's like this gray area loophole, so you don't have to pay royalties on both. So that is a way to cut down on costs. And that's what he's saying was happening. So like Batman, this, whatever his name is, Lucius Fox's son, you don't have to pay royalties on this character, and you don't have to pay royalties on Batman. You don't have to pay royalties on anything. There's like loopholes. So they get around these loopholes, and there you go. And that's why they do stuff like this. They'll kill them off, maybe boost some sales. And another reason why they do this stuff is because when they come out with Justice League 75, right? And Comic Tom was telling me all about this, is they will release a bazillion variant covers. And people like Comic Tom or comic stores or whatever, if you want your own variant, you have to pay all this money to DC to create these variants. So then DC gets this huge influx of money because, hey, this is going to be a big main event. So then everyone needs their variant covers. And you can't have a variant cover of every single comic out there. You can't just, like, I can't just call up DC and be like, hey, I've done variants with you before. I want to do a variant on this random comic. Like, no, they usually section off this cover or this comic is okay to do a variant on. Like, maybe Justice League 74. Nope, can't do any variants on that one. But 75, it's going to be a big event, so we'll let you do variants. So boom, they get a massive influx of money due to that because it's going to be a big, huge thing. There's going to be thousands and thousands of variants, and they get, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, $10,000 to $15,000 roughly every time someone wants to do a variant. So if you have 10 different variants, you do the math. $150,000 extra dollars that DC gets because of that. So, yep. So that's just kind of interesting. So it's I don't think it's really a woke thing. I mean, there's probably some of that in there, but it's more of a money thing. And don't worry, these characters will all be back eventually because this is what's going to happen. Someone's going to come in and write this new Justice League with these kids in it, and the sales will slump for like a year, and then eventually they'll bring them back, all the original characters. How they're going to die somewhere. They'll probably be in like the Phantom Zone, Negative Zone, whatever zone they're going to be in, and they'll be brought all back. And then everyone will be, now we got to make more variants of those. The return of Superman and Batman and all this kind of stuff. We'll all start all over with number ones, just like the new 52. Got to start with number one all over again. Number one Justice League, number one Batman, number one Superman, all this kind of stuff. They're going to be slightly different. So because we changed their origins just slightly, because why? Because their origin stories end up falling into public domain. So you have to create something new about them. That's another reason why. A lot of these things fall into public domain, and what that means is me, you, anyone down the street can use that and sell product using that. What was it? I think it was The Wizard of Oz by MGM. They didn't create that story, but they did create the ruby red slippers, and that's why they're such a prominent feature in there. So they owned the copyright for that. So you can't create a Wizard of Oz story with the ruby red slippers. It might be in public domain now, but you couldn't. If you use that, you get sued by MGM because they own the rights to Dorothy having the ruby red slippers, but they don't own the rights to Dorothy because that's in public domain. So that's why they create new origins, new things, new backstories, new characters, all this kind of stuff, because the other characters fall in the public domain. And anyone can use them, and they can't sue people for using them. So it all comes down to money, and yeah,